Germany, and I now make a statement as the representative of the Russian Federation. Today we are to vote on the draft resolutions presented by the humanitarian troika of Kuwait, Germany and Belgium. To begin, we should define what goals have been declared and which are actually being pursued by its authors in reality. Since the beginning of the discussion, it has been said that they are being guided exclusively by humanitarian considerations and are not pursuing any kind of hidden objectives and don't want to undermine the unity of the Security Council. If that were true, then without any hesitation we would support this text. However, unfortunately, the content of the draft and the course of the work on it is clear indication of the real objective of our colleagues, which is to save the international terrorists who are entrenched in Idlib from their final defeat and to free those who are guilty of what's happened in Idlib. I would like to particularly emphasize immediately that ignoring the need to fight against terrorists on the part of the authors of this draft has been the watershed moment that hasn't allowed us to support the resolution that is before us. In this way, the humanitarian penholders haven't taken account of the decisions that have been coordinated in the Security Council in calling us to comply with the Sochi Memorandum of last year. The co-sponsors are not establishing those key provisions on the ceasefire that does not cover terrorist groups. The whole period of the work on the draft, we've had a very difficult feeling about it. The humanitarian work of our colleagues has constantly been in coincidence with areas falling under the control of terrorists. That was the case in Eastern Ghouta and in Aleppo, and it's also what is happening now with Idlib. And it's strange, although it's not strange to us, that they compared the situation with Iraq, which we've talked about dozens of times. Each time you sing the same song. As the Syrian government aims to undermine terrorists, you look at the situation with those who are combating Assad. In Idlib, as we were convinced recently by the representative of the United Kingdom, there are more infants than terrorists. Absolutely improbable and unsubstantiated figures about mass movements of people have also been thrown out. Where are these people moving to? Where are they going to live then? The population in Idlib, according to different sources, including UN sources, there are varying figures that vary by hundreds of thousands. Furthermore, now we hear more and more about the fact that Hayat Tahrir al-Sham allegedly has freed certain structures which it's allowing peaceful life to establish there and for there to be a kind of civilian administration to be established. We've heard that also about al-Nusra, its predecessor, saying that both groups, we should point out these two groups are listed by the Security Council as terrorist organizations. Finally, another important issue, the humanitarians have put all kinds of calls to stop the murder of civilians in Idlib and the situation for civilians, but in fact, the situation is different. Firstly, there are no large-scale operations are being carried out in Idlib and haven't been. The province is observing a ceasefire that is periodically undermined by terrorists themselves. They're the ones who violate the ceasefire. The reliability of the data used by our colleagues in the Security Council is dubious. On the 16th of September, we gave a detailed press conference during which we provided irrefutable data saying that the most allegedly flagrant cases of airstrikes by Russia and Syria against civilian institutions in Idlib were in fact falsifications. But the deconfliction mechanism is being used for misinformation. Today, the distinguished representative of the United States began her statement saying that once again we have heard about airstrikes on hospitals. But this Ms. Muller fairly, however, didn't follow that line. She noted that there had been a change in the situation. But looking at hospitals, I'll give you two examples on this issue, which we also mentioned at the press conference. The hospital Kafr Zayti had allegedly been bombed, but we saw instead that there was an underground territory which was 4 kilometers from the actual hospital. But on the Marat al-Numani Central Hospital, which had also allegedly been bombed, it was actually a police post that was 10 kilometers away from the actual hospital and that was being used as a weapons depot. But the two actual hospitals had not been harmed. And the underground cell and the police office also hadn't been bombed, but this had been transferred to the UN through a deconfliction measure, but the coordinates had been given out as allegedly from reliable sources in Idlib. But in fact, these sources weren't on the ground in Idlib. We established 12 sets of these false coordinates. We showed photos of the before and after of the alleged bombing. The buildings and facilities, including medical facilities, had been untouched. I understand that for you this situation is unpleasant and uncomfortable, and it's interesting that none of the Western media were interested in the information at the press conference. It seems we understand that there cannot be a military solution to the Syrian conflict, but only a political one, as is the case with any conflict, wherever it might be. But for the beginning, in order to ease the process of political statement, it would be quite a good idea to get rid of the illegal armed groups working in Syria that are present illegally in the country. Colleagues, we are convinced that we cannot be guided by lies and misinformation in taking decisions within the Security Council, even if these lies and misinformation are very beneficial to somebody. It is unacceptable and it is immoral to speculate over the suffering of the civilian population who are hostages to a row of terrorists connected to our Western colleagues. Furthermore, we all understand that an unconstructive position taken by our Western colleagues from the outset, and which has not changed during the course of the work on the draft, shows their genuine objectives. Once again, to force Russia to use a veto on the Syrian subject. We, from the outset, have warned the co-sponsors that their resolution in this form is doomed to failure. They knew this and they know it still. Nonetheless, despite these warnings, they have put the resolution to the vote, deliberately violating the union of the Council. I'd like to ask the co-authors of the resolution, what are you going to achieve by doing this? What signal are you sending to the international community? Do you want to look at our veto during the presence of during our presidency of the Security Council? Do you want to make your contribution to the establishment of a constitutional committee? I call on delegations who really want to see the situation in Syria resolved and really want to depoliticize the humanitarian issues to vote together with us against the draft from the humanitarian troika. I now once again return to my duties as the President of the Security Council.